More than 14,000 jobs in Gauteng were affected by the recent unrest. The Premier, David Makhura, says thousands of people still have not been able to get back to work. Makhura was giving an update on the province's economic recovery plan earlier today. Tracking that story for us is eNCA reporter Khayelihle Khumalo. Khayelihle, good afternoon. Welcome to the Midday View. Not a pretty picture that's been painted by the Gauteng Premier about the cost of the recent violence in the province, which is the economic hub of the Republic.
Well, precisely, Braden. So not a very pleasant picture being painted in light of the lootings and the sheer destruction of key infrastructure. So to be precise, in Gauteng, we saw about 30 malls affected and obviously about 14,000 jobs really at stake, people not being able to go back to work. But to look at the very comprehensive now plan to try and revive the economy, we're joined by the MEC responsible for economic development, MEC Dao. So thank you so much indeed, sir, for joining us. So you have presented a very comprehensive plan where you want to make sure that you kickstart this very key economy for the country. Maybe just give us some of the key highlights. What is going to be your key focus in your department?
Well, thank you very much and good day. I think we have established that different levels of enterprises have been impacted by the rioting. At the most basic level, there are hawkers and traders that trade in and around shopping malls that have been impacted. We're creating a facility where these are able to access financing for stock credit and other support mechanisms, including grant funding. We've got small enterprises that are underinsured or not insured at all, and we're creating a facility that looks at blended financing that would constitute both loan and grant, depending on the nature of application that we receive and the nature of challenge that the enterprise is engaging with. We're also looking at supporting those enterprises that are displaced in relation to ensuring access to logistics facilities, access to investment facilitation, access to transportation, but also supporting them in accessing other national grants that have been created and financing mechanisms that have been created. So we're looking at the financing side of the interventions in as much as we're looking at support mechanisms to enterprises impacted on.
And just once again, MEC, we know that in your projections, you're anticipating that some of these facilities will be reopened around August and September this year. What's going to be a message, especially to the business community, in terms of making sure that you expedite all these processes so that we see the economy really coming back to shape?
Firstly, I think the key message is that many of the investors in the townships have indicated a commitment to reopen their facilities and ensure that they are continuing to they'll be able to continue trading, and that's a very important message in terms of whether we can rebuild. The second is about ensuring that there's adequate support to them, both in terms of security but also in terms of enterprise development that would be able to facilitate and enable, and we've had partnerships that are working on that, and we should be able to provide the necessary support. But most important is the discussions that we're having with these investors, with the major retailers, about how do we ensure inclusivity in the local economies, how to ensure that township economies become inclusive of locals themselves through ensuring access to the shop floor, through ensuring that their goods are able to gain access to market through these shops, facilities and so on. And this has to be done through enterprise and supplier development initiatives. We've agreed on an action lab between ourselves and the private sector that would ensure that we can incubate local community-based enterprises and industries that are able to gain access to markets. And this is not just shop floor access, but it's also about along the logistics value chain. How do people participate along that value chain? And I'm encouraged by the feedback that we're getting from the private sector that says, let's work this journey together, not only with government, but also with local community-based enterprises and their associations.
And just before I let you go, MEC, do you have a certain amount that you have set aside? We understand you're going to be working with the likes of IDC and other key institutions. So how are you going to make sure that, you do have sufficient funds to make sure that these programs do bear fruits?
Between us, the IDC, and some of the other funders, we have an initial 400 million. There are others that have committed money to come on board in terms of the investments that will be made. So we expect that this would increase significantly over the next few weeks.
All right, MEC, thank you so much indeed for your time. So, Braden, that's of course MEC for Economic Development, Mr. Dawo, right here in Gauteng. They are facing quite a monumental task of making sure that they do revive the country's economic hub. So the other impact is just around COVID-19, where a number of businesses have been shut down, affecting job opportunities. So there will be quite a lot of focus around that aspect as well.
Yeah, counting the costs of the unrest. Thank you very much. Khayelihle Khumalo speaking to Pax Tau, who is a member of the provincial government here in Gauteng.